The day started quite normally. In fact, it was a beautiful day. The plantation's family knew their routine and started just before the sun came up. The PO's immediate family was also up. The 4 kids had breakfast and headed off to school. The PO enjoyed a slow start to his morning with his beautiful wife. They talked about the day's schedule, lunch and dinner, and their children's homework and chores. Not very far from the PO's wife's side was his little black house girl. At midday, the PO's wife had visitation. Miriam stopped by to spend some time with her. It was the perfect time for her visit. It was the lazy part of the day. The family prepared to take one of their daily breaks, and the PO's wife typically relaxed on the porch with a glass of lemonade with the PO. When the PO saw Miriam, he waved her toward the house, stood up, kissed his wife, then headed inside. You two can chat away. You know I don't enjoy listening to neighborhood chatter. I'll go graze in the kitchen. Come inside soon. Miriam took the PO's seat, and the little black girl brought her a glass of lemonade. They were both casually chatting when the little black girl felt uneasy. One of the PO's kids was upset. Something had upset the youngest child. As modestly as possible, she nudged the PO's wife for her to help her in the kitchen. It's okay. You can share what you feel in front of her. You have no secrets. The little girl did not fully trust Miriam. Something about her didn't always fit well or settle well with the little girl. In this situation, she did not press the issue of being forced to be transparent in front of her because she didn't feel Miriam's knowledge of what had upset the little girl would impact the PO's wife in a negative way. The little girl gave the PO's wife her palm, and immediately she understood the little girl's concern. Indeed, her youngest daughter was sad. Go find out what troubles her. Without any further direction, the girl walked out of the back of the house onto the wraparound porch and kneeled. She transformed herself into a bird and flew as quickly as she could toward the school. She soon landed in a wooded area near the school and took on the form of a beautiful white school-age girl in a light floral patterned dress with ribbons tied in her hair. She found the PO's daughter alone during the recess break while the other kids played. The PO's daughter recognized the little black girl, who others saw as the white girl, immediately, and she felt confident. She began to tell the little girl what bothered her. She hugged the little girl and started for the inside of school. Lunch break was over. The little girl walked out over to the wood's edge, and as quickly as she arrived, she transformed back into a bird and headed home. Winded and with perspiration on her little forehead, the little girl opened her hand to the PO's wife, and she was angered. The kids had accused her dad of marrying a witch. They called her witch child. What was not clear was something about north, south, east, and west. Miriam, it seems the children at school are making fun of my youngest child. They are taunting her and telling her that she is the child of a witch. They both smiled. What perplexes me is what they mean by north, south, east, and west. Miriam had an ability to see through others' eyes the moments immediately before and after, and she knew what it meant, but she didn't share it. Well, look, I've enjoyed spending time with you today. I will come around later in the week to share this new recipe I've been working on. Miriam hugged the PO's wife and promised to return with a recipe that she would die for. The little girl gave an uneasy and fear-filled look at Miriam as she departed. The work on the plantation continued normally. The day ended quite productively. Everyone began to wash themselves for the evening as they prepared themselves for dinner. Soon the PO's kids would be home, and the family would sit and enjoy a meal together and discuss their day. One by one, the kids returned home. They completed their homework assignments and started on their chores. Dinner was soon ready, and the kids could smell the aroma of the food as they finished up their chores and went inside to bathe. Once downstairs and cleaned, they saw their father at one end of the table. The table was set with a full dinner spread. The little girl was seated to the right of the PO's wife, who was seated at the opposite end of the table from the PO. The kids took their normal seats. A prayer was given and dinner began. Only minutes into the meal and hours before sundown, the little girl tapped the PO's wife's foot. Without words, she knew they had 5 potential guests for dinner. As it was several years earlier, the family happily greeted their guests and asked how they were and how they could help. "Can we offer you fruits or vegetables? Would you like to see the PO?" Douglas Hart, Dr. Douglas Hart, accompanied the 4 farm leaders and addressed the men. "We would like to see the PO." "Very well, we'll fetch him. It's dinner time. Will you be staying for dinner?" "How kind of you to ask. This is not a social visit. Dinner is not required. We need a little of his time." They walked at a brisk pace ahead of the 5. The family members explained the visitor's purpose to the PO and his wife. "We have guests." Finish your dinner and then head upstairs to complete your schoolwork. The PO's children were always obedient. "Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am." The PO and his wife walked outside of the house and stood at the base of the stairs of the house. "How can we help you, fine gentlemen, tonight? We understand it's not dinner or fruits and vegetables you seek." "I represent the 4 farms and their farm owners. I'm here to make you an offer. We want you to relinquish your farm to us and distribute your slaves so that each farmer will know the prosperity of plantation is known throughout the years because of Hannah, your witch. We will ask Hannah to stay on as head mistress so she can continue to bless the harvest and keep the slaves healthy." The PO chuckled. "First, I reject your offer flatly. Secondly, there's no witch here. I would know. Is there even such a thing? Fine gentlemen, have a good night. If you would like some fresh fruit or vegetables on your way out, my family can give you a small portion. Good night." As the PO turned around to head back inside the house, the doctor started to speak again. "Your witch is your wife. I see her as she is. She is an amazing beauty who is very much African. She stands beside you as your spouse." "I did not recognize you at first. I was later told how you looked at me in the cool house when we shared fruit and a refreshing drink with you. What you think you know nothing of. Don't be deceived. Leave." "I can never forget your eyes, nor can I forget the horrible way my brother Gene, mother, and dad died in the house fire. My dad was an angry, abusive man. He deserved to die, not my brother and not my mother." Suddenly things made sense. "Your name is Douglas Hartford. Are you little Doug? You have changed. You've also shortened your name to Hart. We knew each other a lifetime ago. Much has changed since then." The PO found this side conversation strange but continued to listen. He watched his wife carry a conversation with this man with a level of familiarity that she did not seem to possess the first time they met a day ago. "Tell me, what fire stops burning once it starts? There's no such fire. You were given what you asked. You have great ability to influence people. Tonight is clear evidence of that. Why didn't you forbid your mother and brother from entering?" "I could not. I was young and weak. Today I'm stronger." "I too was young. I did not have full control. Today I am powerful." The PO's wife turned to her husband and began to speak to him. "I love you and you love me. We have a beautiful family. When your wife fell ill years ago, there was nothing we could do to save her. I assumed her form, and I raised your children and bore your little girl from our own flesh and blood. She looks like your wife and has our blood. No magic can do that. That is simply love. I knew something changed. I could not have possibly imagined this. I love you, and I love what we have. The PO reached for Hannah's hand, and Hannah did something she dared not before. Hannah unveiled herself to the PO, and to all those who could see. She was even more beautiful than the doctor described. The four men who stood with the doctor gasped, albeit difficult. The four farmers at the north, south, east, and west became aware of something unimaginable happening. The PO put one hand on Hannah's face and brought his face close to hers. He gently kissed her. I want to see where my first love lays, and I want to lay next to my current love forever. Hannah shed a single tear and replied, I'll make it so. This murderous witch, this African woman, can't be a joint landowner or married to a white man. The PO defended his wife and his home. Leave! I want to know the happiness you have. You've made that impossible for me. I want to have a family, but I can't. I think you must suffer a similar loss. If you're alone, it's only by your choosing. You chose your lot. The doctor held up his fist. Sensing something was wrong, the cat came to Hannah's side. The four groups advanced the plantation with fire and weapons. In a powerful whisper heard among all the family, Hannah spoke and commanded their action. My dear family, let not one man pass the entrance at the north gate. Do what you must. Arm yourselves and fight. Hannah blew a gentle breath at the five guests, and they were tossed as leaves in a hurricane-force storm several feet away. My dear cat, protect the rear at all costs. I see we have guests of the east and west that want to meet me. I will be a gracious host and greet them. She turned and spoke to her husband. My love, go inside and protect our family. This will not be pretty, and I want to shield you and the children from it. Hannah released the PO's hand and kissed it. He then rushed inside and closed and locked the doors. Hannah magically appeared on the hill and confronted the eastern mob. I offer only one chance to disband and leave this plantation without harm. Otherwise, I will take your continued presence as hostile. The men were startled by Hannah's sudden arrival. Without thinking, one man tossed an axe at her and another shot an arrow toward her. She caught both and returned their welcoming gifts to their original owners. The arrow went to the head and the axe to the chest of the men who instinctively sent them. They both collapsed. Your aggression and hesitation will prevent you from kissing and loving your children or holding your wives tonight. Leave now. The men looked to Mr. Clark for guidance. He instructed them to attack. Suddenly they threw a barrage of spears and weapons at Hannah and moved forward to attack her. Hannah formed a field of protection around herself that was immediately impenetrable by any man. She allowed several spears to enter that she then used to impale the men closest to her. The use of the spear gave Hannah an idea of how to end their advance quickly. Hannah spoke aloud and brought forth a horrific end to the eastern band of attackers. Turn this grassy hill into a field of 1,000 daggers. Your blood will flow and cause this spot to flourish far beyond its maximum ability. Your children will eat the fruit and vegetables that grow here, and the animals will graze and play on the lands you are slaughtered on. Suddenly, varying-sized daggers jolted up from the soil and killed or mortally wounded all of the men. Mr. Eastland and his team endured a horrific end. Those who were not immediately killed stood motionless with spears jutting up through their legs, through their feet, and various parts of their body. They slowly suffered in agony while they watched their friends take their final breaths and watched their life force leave their body. They slowly followed suit, giving way in excruciating pain to death's call as the Reaper patiently waited for them. The battle at the entrance was pretty much evenly matched. The single advantage Mr. Hare and his mob had was that two of the men had a single action firearm that was fatal but slow to recharge for continued use. Mr. Hare and his team were slowly gaining victory on the family. As quickly as she appeared on the eastern portion of the plantation, She flew toward the western edge of the plantation. Some of the men were in shock and terrified seeing a figure move across the sky underneath the moon's light in such a way, landing with a mighty force onto the ground. Some of the men closest to her lost their balance and fell. Hannah did not hesitate to locate Farmer Connor. She saw that his team was advancing from the wooded edge onto the plantation. The trees that provided you cover as you lay in wait to consummate my demise, their roots will shade your body for years to come. Your children, too young to have families presently, will play on their father's grave. Your mothers and sisters will pick the daisies that grow annually through your battered corpses. Die a slow, pain-filled death with one labored breath after another until you take your last breath. Listen as you hear your own bones break, one bone at a time, and be powerless to do anything to stop it. Look to your right and look to your left. Watch and hear your brethren suffer. The ground opened individually below them, and the men jumped and clawed at earthen walls to try to escape. The trees that lined the woods at their back stood up and moved themselves with their branches and roots. They walked and replanted themselves. The trees' roots filled each hole and explored the ground below to reestablish their base. All you could hear were the screams and pains, the clatter of weapons falling and being crushed, and the crackling of bones as the leaves of the trees rustled and trees repositioned themselves. Wasting no time, she went to aid her cat. The cat, it appeared, needed no help. Hannah watched as a proud parent looking onto a mighty accomplishment by their child. She postured herself near the river's edge for those who tried to escape. The cat assumed the form of a bear and mauled to death more than half of Clark's team. Farm owner Clark was the first to suffer at the hand of her protector. Upon Hannah's arrival, 2 men had ropes around the bear with the hope of pulling him down. The bear flung them like rag dolls, and they incurred terrible neck injuries when they landed. While the bear was bleeding, he fought on. He was so ferocious and menacing that some men stood frozen in fear as he approached and pounded them. After realizing their best option was to escape, some ran toward the river. Hannah showed no mercy and conjured animals of unknown origin and uncommon to the region to the river. Electric eels wrapped around them. Some were caught in branches and drowned, and others met an untimely end when human-sized fish bit their heads off. Those not completely consumed as fish food were tossed about in the rushing waters and river stone. The animals that magically appeared, they disappeared once the deed was done. Hannah moved to care for the bear. The bear transformed back into her protector and jumped into Hannah's arm. You fought well. Be whole. Be healed. The cat jumped down and turned into the little black girl. She held Hannah's hand as they walked initially toward the house. Seconds after turning around, Hannah gasped. The house! It's on fire! She held the little girl's hand firmly and suddenly appeared inside the house. Dr. Hart had come up with a plan to burn the house on all sides. The fire was climbing the exterior walls of the wooden house, and the thick smoke started to fill the inside of the house. Be careful. Go help the family at the entrance. Hannah instructed the little girl to help, but told her to wait while she pulled a string of her own hair and affixed it to her bow. Wait. Now you are stronger, faster, and smarter, and more powerful. Remember, you are still mortal. Go. I will save you if you need it. Hannah called out to her family. She heard faint sounds on the second floor. She knew how to control the fire, but the physical damages to the house's structure complicated things. She spoke to the fire. Do as I say. Go away. Return to the ones who gave you life. As she walked up the steps, her foot went through a wooden board as she sustained deep scratches on her ankle. Angered, she commanded the smoke to dispel. At the top of the stairs, she found her family huddled in a corner. Only 2 immediately recognized her, the PO and their youngest child. The youngest ran and grabbed her mother's thigh through her dress. The 3 older children felt a connection, but wanted and deserved an explanation, although now was not the time for an explanation. Link hands and close your eyes. Do as I say and do it quickly. Suddenly, they appeared on the southern part of the farm. Be careful where you look and step. There are horrendous sights here. They carefully walked. They took for granted they were out of the view of their attackers. Hannah was leading her family, her husband, and children carefully through the carnage left by the bear and away from the fire-destroyed house to a place of safety. The little one was between her dad, the PO, and her mother, Hannah, followed closely by 3 older children. A shot rang out. Instinctively, Hannah reached for the approaching bullet. Its hot metal pierced her hand, cutting through the center, and found and hit its intended target, the PO. He was shot in the neck. 2 more shots were fired. None shall pass my barrier. An invisible, impenetrable barrier surrounded her family, and Hannah turned to her husband and tried to attend to him. It was too late. He had lost too much blood for her to heal him. Fiercely angry and hurt, she repaired her hand and screamed. Baseball-sized hail fell from the sky and pelted the farm attackers who were unlucky enough not to find shelter. Hannah provided instruction to her 4 children to ensure their safety. Walk along the river to our favorite picnic area. I or a member of the family will later meet you. No matter which of us comes to take care of you, you better obey and be prepared to leave with them. She assumed the PO's wife's form. The 3 older children then understood. She kissed each of them, turned around, and walked toward the house. Go, don't look back. Hannah was devastated and enraged. She went to look for Dr. Hart. She assumed her natural form. Dr. Hart had managed to escape the fire and smoke, but his 4 comrades were not so lucky. They were severely burned. The fire did indeed return to the ones who started them as Hannah instructed. The little girl searched through the badly pelted men from the hail. She looked for survivors in order to kill them. She saw a few survivors. She assumed the form of Mr. Hare. Are you okay, friend? Can I help? Yes, help me. The farmer, without hesitation, grabbed the badly injured guy's head and broke his neck. The farmer continued this process until none were alive that he was aware of. Those pretending they were dead in an attempt to avoid the farmer, who had gone mad, would slowly die from their injuries and their wounds. No one was coming to save them, and it was unsafe to stand and risk a vicious assault from the family or the likeness of Mr. Hare. Where are you, Dr. Hart? Seems you have a knack for surviving fires, both fires you plan and the ones you start yourself. Maybe you've requested this fire too. You never want your hands dirty, so I suspect you had someone to do it for you. Doug, you are quite a two-faced monster. You are extremely comfortable removing the people you perceive as enemies. Remember, I told you that your father loves you. Don't you remember that? Unable to sense the presence of the yellow-eyed doctor, Douglas came from behind and nearly swatted Hannah on the head with a shovel. In the nick of time, Hannah heard his footsteps and managed to move enough to not receive the full impact on her head. Doug did, however, plant a firm swat on Hannah's upper back that forced her to the ground. Hannah, it seems you are weak from behind, and that my ability to see you and to cloak myself is a damning advantage over you. Hannah was seriously hurt, and while Doug's diatribe seemed to take an eternity, it was only seconds before he raised his hand and shoveled the swat her again. Hannah assumed the form of his mother, Mrs. Hartford. It was the first time Doug had seen his mother since the night she died. The shovel was raised in the air and ready to descend rapidly onto Hannah's head, but Doug hesitated for just a second to stare at his mother. This pause was his demise. A ferocious dog jumped up and locked onto his wrist and slung him to the ground. The dog began to mangle at the doctor's wrist. The sound of a snapping bone and the sight of pulsing blood spewed out. Hannah spoke to her protector. "Thank you, my dear. I can handle it from here." Hannah then turned her words toward her childhood friend, Doug. "Dr. Hart, I do have a limitation to see a yellow eye, and I'm also most vulnerable from behind." Hannah stood up and healed herself. She then transformed her appearance. She was pristine and beautiful as ever. She looked as if she had never been in a battle. Hannah moved near Douglas. "Stand before me." Under a power and strength that was not his own, Dr. Hart floated up into an upright position. His left wrist was bleeding, and he was in extreme pain. "You will see no more." In an instant, she caused a rare, powerful eye infection to slowly take Dr. Hart's vision. She then prepared to let him die by fire. He had escaped fire twice. He would not be lucky a third time. Use your memory. Can you remember when we were children? Do you remember the frog, the branch, and the stone? The doctor immediately recalled it and began to breathe heavily. You will remember and feel what you remember. Suddenly, a beautiful fire appeared. It moved slowly toward Dr. Hart, and he screamed. Masked by Dr. Hart's cries of agony was a single shot. Hannah fell to her knees. The fire dwindled, but not before causing extreme and extensive burns to Doug's body. Mr. Hare had survived Hannah's softball-sized pelting hail and the battle with the family of slaves that protected the northern entrance. He hid outside of the view of the little girl who killed his men using his likeness. He waited for the perfect moment. That time arrived, and he took a single shot from behind Hannah and prepared to set his gun for a second shot. He never had a second chance for a second shot. He fell to the ground and flailed his hands against the head and shoulders of a powerful Rottweiler, the little girl, who severely, repeatedly, and without remorse lacerated his face and neck, leaving him mortally wounded and horribly mauled. The dog transformed back into the little girl and ran to the aid of her beloved witch. "Take me to him." The little girl immediately turned into a strapping African man. He effortlessly scooped Hannah up carefully and walked toward the PO. The family of slaves started to wail when they saw Hannah to the ground. They cried even more as they watched Hannah being carried to the southern end of the plantation. Her hands and arms were pointed downward. They knew something was horribly wrong when she did not walk underneath her own power. They followed the muscular man, the protector who carried her. They worried for her and their future. They would be more chattel without her. They were very hopeful for her survival. Lay me beside my love. I can't imagine living without him, so I won't. My power is great, even as this body dies. No one here will know the pain of slavery or separation from their loved ones. Those who died tonight secured your freedom. Take care of my family. They're at the river. Bury this body with my love. Make it so. Hannah spoke to the family and the little black girl. This place will be a paradise. This place will be a sanctuary. No one in this town will ever speak of this day, nor will they ever treat you ill. With that, Hannah died. She allowed herself to give into death's pool.